I swore I would never love again until I saw a waitress caring for my daughter like a mother. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I stood there, my heart racing, tears stinging my eyes as I watched her. A waitress. The air was thick, like it was holding its breath. She was serving tables at the diner, moving swiftly, yet effortlessly. My daughter sat at the corner booth, her small hands playing with a half-eaten pancake, a frown etched on her face. It was a look I knew too well, the look of longing, the look of needing someone. And in that moment, my world seemed to swirl around me. I had vowed to protect her, to never let anyone close again. After the last heartbreak, I hardened my heart like a fortress. I told myself love was a dangerous game, filled with pain and shattered dreams. But then I watched as this waitress knelt beside my daughter. She spoke softly. Her voice was a gentle melody, drowning out the clatter of dishes and chatter of customers. I heard the warmth in her words, the spark of understanding. My heart betrayed me. It began to open just a crack. The diner filled with a strange energy. The scent of coffee and burnt toast. A comforting familiarity mixed with a heavier weight. I looked around at strangers who laughed, others who watched with their eyes glued to screens, but they didn't matter. My focus was locked on that waitress, who was weaving her magic with my baby. My daughter's face lit up, a smile blossoming like a flower breaking through concrete. And I felt something shift inside me. There was something mysterious about the waitress. She had an air of grace, a strength that seemed to pulse around her. When she laughed, it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. I couldn't help but wonder, what was her story? What hurt hid behind her bright eyes? I wanted to know. Oh, how I wanted to know. But then came a loud crash. A plate shattered, sending shards flying. I flinched, a tight knot forming in my stomach. The waitress turned, her face momentarily twisted in panic. The warmth faded, replaced by a flicker of fear. My heart raced. What if she was like me? What if she too was hiding scars? I was losing myself in these thoughts when I caught her gaze. Those deep, soulful eyes met mine. I felt exposed and vulnerable, as if she could see all the darkness I carried. And yet, there was a glimmer of something understanding, hope. But in that instant, as I looked into her eyes, the connection was interrupted. A man stormed in, shouting, his anger slicing through the air. My heart pounded louder. Who was he? What did he want? The waitress' face went pale. She froze, caught in the storm. My daughter clutched her teddy bear wide-eyed. I couldn't breathe. My protective instincts surged. What if that man was dangerous? I knew I had to do something. But my legs felt like lead, and a lump formed in my throat. Would I risk everything for the mystery of a waitress who cared for my daughter? This was chaos unraveling around me. And I stood at the edge, heart beating wildly, stuck between fear and the spark of something new. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The noise in the diner drowned out my thoughts, the man's furious voice cutting through the steady hum of chatter like a knife. I felt the tension rippling through the room. It was a raw, palpable fear that settled in my chest. The waitress's hands trembled slightly as she stood there, caught between the fury of the intruder and the innocence of my daughter, who looked sheltered under the great weight of the moment the world as she knew it, upside down. Why can't you just stay away? The man shouted, his face twisted with frustration and fury. Every syllable seemed to pull the air from my lungs. It wasn't just anger. There was something deeper embedded in his words, a hurt that clawed beneath the surface. But I couldn't let that distract me. I had to focus. I had to protect. "I'm sorry," the waitress stammered, her eyes darting between him and my daughter. I didn't mean to before she could finish. He took a step closer. "You think you can just walk away from me? That I wouldn't find you? You're wrong. My fists clenched instinctively. I had never been one for violence, but the thought of that man intimidating her, scaring my daughter, no, I couldn't bear it. I took a deep breath, pushing against the primal urge to hide. I could either stand by or step forward. Without fully knowing what I was doing, I moved toward them. "Hey, leave her alone," I called out, my voice surprising even me with its strength. The man turned his focus on me, his expression shifting from anger to bewilderment. I could see confusion cloud his eyes, as though he was wondering who I was to intervene. "What's this, some kind of hero?" he scoffed, a cruel smirk creeping onto his lips. "Mind your own business, buddy." I felt my heart race, but I held my ground. Just a few feet away stood the waitress, uncertainty etched onto her face. My daughter watched, wide-eyed, clutching her teddy, her innocence hanging in the balance. "You don't need to do this," I said quietly, hoping to reach through the anger. "Whatever's between you, it doesn't have to involve her." But the man's anger twisted more, sparking a dangerous light in his eyes. "And who the hell are you to say that? You don't know anything." I almost stepped back at the fire igniting in his tone, but I couldn't. I saw the waitress's fingers twitch as she moved slightly, wanting to reach for my daughter, to reassure her. That subtle motion, that shared concern, tethered us in that chaotic moment. Suddenly, the door swung open, a flurry of life entered, family seeking breakfast, an elderly couple clutching hands and smiling. They paused, sensing the tension, and it felt like a collective breath was drawn in. I couldn't let this spiral out beyond our control, but before I could respond, a flicker of movement caught my eye. The waitress stepped in front of my daughter, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Please, just let it go. I'm sorry for whatever happened, but she doesn't have to be a part of this." The man's gaze softened for a brief moment, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe he'd listen. Maybe he'd realize the absurdity of his rage. But in the next instant, that flicker faded, replaced by stubbornness. "Not until I get answers," he yelled, his fists clenching that a tremor quaked through me. I want to grab my daughter and run, to pull her away from the growing storm brewing before us. But then I felt the weight of the waitress' intent gaze, urging me silently to stay. Somehow, with her, I felt strength. "Tell him," I encouraged her softly, knowing now that whatever world she bore, my daughter would only be drawn closer to it the more she witnessed this moment unfold. The waitress swallowed hard, and for a brief second, vulnerability coated her features. "If there are things about my past you don't understand," she murmured in a low voice. "But none of it involves her. Please, I just want to protect her and myself." And in that quiet plea, my heart cracked open a little wider. Love Wazer could be an act of courage, a bridge over the chasm of pain. But the man's stormy expression returned, shattering that moment of tenderness. "Protect? You think you're the one." Who knows what? Suddenly my daughter, still clutching her teddy, piped up, "Please, mister, don't be mean. We just want pancakes and a nice day." Silence cloaked the diner, cocooning us in her innocent request. I could hardly breathe as I watched the newcomer's fury wrestle against a single, fragile voice. The man's face shifted, torn within the battle raging inside him, faltering momentarily under the weight of a child's honesty. And just then, the door swung open again. This time it was a police officer stepping into the den. My heart leaped, thank goodness. But then the man's face twisted with a new, terrifying fury. "Just you wait." He spat at us before storming out, leaving behind a chill that clawed at my soul. It was over for now. But I could feel the air thick with unresolved tension, the sadness twinging at the edge of something much deeper. When was he coming back? The waitress knelt beside my daughter, relief mingling with tears in her eyes. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from my daughter's forehead as though she were urging the world to stay calm. In that moment, there was a fragile intimacy forming, a bond that felt more profound than anything I'd felt in years. I should feel grateful, but I couldn't shake the dread curling within me. As I turned to thank her, brushing aside my own fears, I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, perhaps. Before I could question it, the smell of burnt toast wafted through the air. The waitress' face paled again. But this time, she wasn't just seeing my daughter. She was staring into something deeply buried within herself. And I thought, was it possible that we were all more connected than we realized? But before I could voice my thoughts, the kitchen door burst open again, and a second man, this one rougher, older, more menacing, stalked through, locking eyes with the waitress. My heart dropped. No, not again. This was only the beginning. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered ominously above us, casting sharp shadows that danced along the walls. The tension left behind by that man's eruption clutched at my chest, making it hard to breathe, as if the air had thickened with unspoken fears. The newcomer, a man whose heavy presence seemed to absorb all warmth, stared directly at the waitress. She recoiled slightly as he approached, the vulnerability I had noticed moments earlier replaced by strained fear. I wanted to intervene again, but my limbs felt leaden, paralyzed by an instinctive understanding of danger. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Please," the waitress whispered, her bravado crumbling. "Just give me a moment to explain." "Explain what?" he barked, and the energy in the space shifted again, weighted with threat. Every patron in the diner had gone eerily silent, eyes darting nervously between the unfolding drama and the escape routes. My daughter nestled tighter into the booth, her small frame trembling against the vinyl seat. "Just leave her out of this, okay? She's just a child," I found myself saying, the words spilling out before I could think. I didn't know who this man was, but if he was linked to the first, I had to protect my daughter and the fragile haven we had carved out in this moment. "Who do you think you are?" The newcomer sneered, but before he could escalate his aggression, the waitress stepped closer, her voice shaking but resolute. "I am trying to build a life away from you," she said, her eyes fierce as they locked onto his. "I don't want to go back to that chaos." The man's brow furrowed, the mix of anger and hurt giving his expression a haunting vulnerability. "You think you can just forget everything? That ID let you?" I could see the despair etching deep lines into her face, and in that instant, I knew she carried burdens far heavier than I had imagined. I didn't understand the history that lay between them. Was it love that suddenly soured, or pain that festered into something dark? A frantic noise broke the thick tin Iona beeping from the diner's kitchen. A chef stumbled through the door, arms flailing as he shouted for someone to turn off the fryer. In that brief chaos, something shifted. It was as if the universe momentarily paused. The bartender saw his chance and whispered to me, "Call for backup." I met his gaze, both of us knowing the weight of our decisions right then. "Sir, you should leave," I said again, my voice steady, almost soothing despite my racing heart. "You have no business here." To my surprise, the waitress turned, her anguish shifting to rallying courage. "You don't need to protect me. I can handle this," she said, though her hands trembled slightly. And suddenly, my daughter found her voice again. "Mister, why do you look so scary? You should smile more." Her innocent words wrapped around us like a cocoon, catching the increasingly strained atmosphere. For a heartbeat, the menacing veneer on the newcomer cracked. He blinked, confusion mingling with disbelief at the girl's candidness. It was a small, fleeting moment of humanity glimpsed through the turbulence of emotions. But the respite didn't last long. "Shut up," he barked, the regression back into fury like a punch to the gut. I felt the ice crystallize in my veins, the dread pooling deeper. The waitress glanced over briefly, as if searching for approval or some indication of support. My heart swelled with determination. "Listen," I started, my voice gaining strength. "Whatever you think she owes you, you can't take it out on her. It's not right." The newcomer laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You're pathetic," he retorted, his eyes steeling like daggers. "You don't know anything about us. She doesn't know how to protect herself. He'll be the one to guide her back to what she belongs to." "You think fear is guidance?" The waitress shot back, and I could see a flicker of defiance ignite in her eyes. For a moment, I feared the fury would break loose again, but then something unexpected happened. The cook emerged from the kitchen, holding a half-burned tray of fries, as if it were a shield. "Break it up, man," he shouted, oblivious to the simmering conflict, but adding his voice to stave off a potential explosion. The newcomer took a step back, tensions frazzled, and as confusion momentarily held him, a flicker of hesitation crossed his features. And then, without warning, the door flew open once more, this time with a heavy slam, and I braced myself at whatever would crash against us next. In walked a woman, drenched in tears but standing tall, a weary strength radiating from her emerald Aisa familiar figure that rooted itself into the depths of my memory. My heart dropped as my mind raced. Could it be? The waitress gasped, recognizing her too. "Mom?" she whispered, the tremor of disbelief intertwining with hope. The man's demeanor shifted instantly. He went from imposing to alarmed, caught in a web of realities spiraling violently toward one another. As she stepped forward, the weight of uncertainty pressed down. Memories I thought long buried began to resurface in flashes, moments wrapped in pain and joy, all at once racing toward an inevitable confrontation. Would this turn the tide? Or would it only deepen the wounds in mysterious ways? I stood frozen, the emotional chasm before me vast and unyielding, my gut twisting in apprehension. The unraveling of their past was bound to change everything. In that moment, I realized we were all tethered by shattered pieces and uncertain futures, and the reckoning had only just begun. The woman who had just entered the diner held my gaze with a mixture of hope and desperation. "I've been searching for you," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotion. The air was thick with an impending storm, as everyone in the diner held their breath, suspended in a moment that promised either disaster or reconciliation. The newcomer, a man with a fierce demeanor, flinched at the sight of her, his entire body tensing, as if she were the one force in the universe able to actually hurt him. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice low and incredulous. "Please," she pleaded softly, taking a cautious step forward. "I need to talk to you, both of you." The three adults froze at her words, their drudging animosity momentarily halted, as if a splash of hope had just hit icy waters. But before anyone could respond, a siren echoed outside, creeping closer. I felt a chill run down my spine, had called for backup, and their arrival threatened to raise the stakes even higher. The waitress' eyes widened, and she glanced sharply toward the door. "No," she whispered, fear tightening around her throat. "Just stay calm," I said quietly, my heart racing, aware that an external conflict often becomes a catalyst for internal chaos. "We'll figure this out together." The sirens blasted into the diner's air like an awakening, heralding an intrusion that could unravel every fragile thread we had woven gleefully or hopelessly through all the tension built within these walls. I caught sight of the woman's face as worry seeped into her features, while the man took a deep, steadying breath, his tension morphing into an urgency I hadn't expected. "Listen to me," he said, his tone low yet almost conciliatory. "We don't have time for this. They're coming." With that, an unexpected determination flickered in the waitress' eyes, an ember of resolve amidst the confusion. "I won't run from this," she said fiercely. "Not after everything I've done to be here." But as uncertain as our surroundings had become, the raw vulnerability of that moment dominated my thoughts. And as I watched her reclaim her voice, my heart sank. We were all caught up in a web of unresolved feelings, each beat propelling us further down a path that promised revelations we weren't yet ready to confront. I squeezed my daughter's hand tighter, fear and love swirling together as I realized the threads of this tale were more complex than I could have ever imagined. One thing felt certain: whatever came next would change everything forever. The sirens grew louder, an eerie reminder that chaos was encroaching, that our fragile moment was about to shatter. I glanced around the diner, feeling the tension ripple through everyone present. The weight of the unresolved past hung dense in the air like an impending storm, choking any glimmer of hope before it could take form. The woman's eyes darted between the waitress and the man, her hands clasped in front of her, as if praying for understanding. My daughter, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in our midst, released her hand from mine and slipped from her seat. She meandered toward the edge of the booth, her curious gaze fixed on the newcomer. "Are you going to be my new mommy?" she asked chirpily, her innocence piercing through the darkness like a ray of sunshine. The diner fell completely silent, the question reverberating against the cold metal of the empty coffee pots and chipped vinyl seats. The air had grown thick with tension, but my daughter's simple honesty broke through, a beacon of pure emotion untainted by the complexities we adults had sown into our lives. Though I could sense the pain in the waitress' eyes, there was a flicker of something softness, perhaps alongside her lingering fear. The woman stared at my daughter, her expression flitting through confusion and recognition. In that brief moment, I could see how the child had taken root in her heart, somehow entwining her history with all that was lost. "I'd like to be in your life," she managed, her voice trembling. "But it's going to be complicated. It won't be like it was." "Complicated is okay," my daughter replied, her earnestness soothing, like an unexpected bomb on a raw wound. "I like complicated. It makes you think of fun things." The man shifted in his place, his demeanor softening a fraction. "Fun things?" he echoed, a hint of disbelief mixing into his skepticism. "It's easy for kids to think like that, but it's really fun, like donuts and ice cream," and her voice trailed off as she spotted the uniformed officers entering the diner. Their presence felt cold, their uniforms stark against the warmth inside. "Oh," she murmured, stepping back, uncertainty clouding her face. "Kids really do think of fun things," the woman whispered, looking lost in memory, her voice now barely a whisper against the backdrop of confusion. "I used to love," but her words were lost, swallowed by the imposing aura of the officers who had now surveyed the scene. "Everyone stay calm, please," one of the officers said, scanning the room as if expecting trouble to erupt at any moment. The tension coiled tighter, and I could feel the fidgeting energy around me. The waitress, tense and defensive, approached the officers. "We're fine here. Just a little family drama," she said, the words heavy with reproach, as if acknowledging the storm brewing beneath her own words. "We're here to help," one of the officers responded, eyeing the woman, then the man, gauging the volatile currents shifting among them. "But it's crucial that we understand the situation completely." I caught the waitress' glance, filled with a silent plea for solidarity. I wanted to reach out to her, to reassure her, but my throat felt tight with uncertainty. In this moment, we were all struggling to keep our worlds from colliding, but the reality hung over us like a dark cloud. Before the sirens interrupted, the man said, his voice firm yet wavering, "We were trying to find a way to move past this. I heard you say you wanted to understand. I think we need to start there." The woman turned to him, her eyes wide, vulnerable in a way that made her truly human. "I want to understand, too. They'll do anything to mend this. We're all hurting." As the officers continued to observe the heated interaction, I noticed an unexpected warmth returning to the moment. The way the woman looked at the man reflected a desire for unity, a spark of hope in the midst of their chaos. The waitress turned to me, searching for reassurance, her eyes desperate and pleading. "What do I do?" she whispered, insecurity weighing heavy in her voice. "Stay strong," I urged softly, though I felt the weight of my own uncertainty. "You fought so hard to be here. Don't let the sirens scare you away." As I spoke, I could almost see a flicker of fire igniting within her, the resilience she had carried with her for so long. "I'll not run," she declared with newfound courage, and her voice turned the heads of the surrounding patrons, filling the diner with an unyielding warmth. But just as I thought we might move toward understanding, my phone buzzed in my pocket, and I could hardly ignore it. Pulling it out, I saw a text from an unknown number. "Your daughter is at risk. It's time to come clean." The breath caught in my throat as the room spun around me, the reality crashing down like a wave. This was the tipping point. "Everyone listen," I called out, and all eyes shifted toward me, the weight of the world and the secrets we carried hanging heavy in that silent pause. I think there's something we all need to know." And just as I felt the tide of fear wash over me, tightening like a noose, the oppressive silence transformed into a new storm, one that none of us were prepared to face. The diner felt too contained, too suffocating as I stood there, the unknown message flashing like a stark reality check before my eyes. I could see the quickening pulse of tension around me, weaving through the silence that had followed my words. I was torn between the desperate need to protect my daughter and the weight of the past that had kept us apart from each other and from others for so long. What do you mean? The man pressed, his voice gravelly with urgency. The eyes that had once held skepticism now reflected concern. The woman shifted, her brow furrowed as though trying to piece together the fragmented puzzle that was rapidly unfolding. It's a text, I managed, my heart racing in response. It says my daughter is at risk. The room seemed to inhale, a collective gasp threading through the air, punctuated only by the distant wail of sirens still circling outside. My daughter, innocent and unblemished by the turbulence around her, absorbed the gravity of the moment with a serene curiosity, unaware of the shadows closing in around us. Is it a threat? The waitress interjected, her voice steadier than I felt. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out, as if willing to absorb the fear that had begun to crack the surface of my composure. Do you have any idea who it could be? No, I don't. My voice faltered, and I could sense the chilling reality crashing around us like waves against a rocky shore. Every second dragged heavier than the last. But someone knows something. Poor choices in my past, they seemed to haunt me. A flicker of sympathy crossed the waitress' features as she stepped closer. There was solidarity in her eyes, a shared burden that made me want to reach out more than ever. In that moment, she didn't appear as a mere waitress serving coffee and comfort. She embodied a wellspring of understanding, as if she had weathered storms of her own. I won't let anything happen to her, she said firmly, determination emerging from her gentle demeanor. If someone is threatening her, we will figure it out together. You won't have to face this alone. The reassurance woven through her words anchored me for a fleeting moment, and I reached out, almost touching her hand before pulling back. Refraining from mingling vulnerability with the chaos around us, the man took a small step forward. Let's not panic. We need a plan. Whoever sent that message could have the wrong idea, or worse, could be trying to provoke a reaction. His eyes drifted to my daughter, who had taken it upon herself to thump her small hands against the tabletop, a staccato rhythm that broke through the tense silence. She wore a bright smile, oblivious to the tempest swirling within the room, a pure soul against the weight of responsibilities I feared dropping onto her small shoulders. No matter what happens, you promise, right? The woman looked at me imploringly, her voice tinged with a delicate vulnerability. You'll protect her. You'll protect all of us, won't you? Her appeal tugged at some part of me, a dormant instinct to shield those I could from the pains I had long endured. But the mantle of protection felt too heavy. The fear had sunk its claws in my heart, digging deep. They'll try. I have to, I replied, wondering if trying was enough in a world that often spiraled out of control. Then, in an explosive moment of clarity, the message replayed in my mind, cold and sharp. I have to make things right. This can't go on, but I can't do it alone. If someone is threatening her, I need all of you to be here. The waitress nodded, her determination shimmering in faintly hopeful eyes. The man stepped forward as well, curiosity mixed with something deeper. What? Friendship? Resolve? There was a glimmer of acceptance, a shared understanding that the past may divide us, but the future might unite us. Suddenly, the woman gasped, her hand covering her mouth as realization dawned on her. We haven't explored every possibility. Could it be someone from your past? Someone who knows you? The weight of her words crashed over me, each syllable anchoring me further into the depths of my regret. Faded names and forgotten faces danced along the edges of my memory, daring me to unearth what I had buried for so long. The ache of nostalgia mixed with my resolve, a quagmire of fear and fury. But before I could respond, the diner's door swung open with a force that echoed. A figure emerged, obscured by darkness, silhouetted against the fluorescent lights. All conscious thought dissolved, replaced by an instinctual coil of fear within me. The figure stepped into the room, and I felt my heart plummet. It was a face I thought I'd never see, a thread of my past woven into the fabric of my present. "Hello," he pronounced, his voice smooth but laced with something darker, unsettling. "I heard you're looking for answers." Surprise. As I stared into the haunting eyes that mirrored my own mistakes, I knew the storm was just beginning. A tempest where revealing truths might dismantle everything, and yet it held the potential for understanding, however dangerous that path may be. The air in the diner thickened with an uneasy tension as the figure stepped further into the light. My breath hitched in my throat, caught between the remnants of disbelief and a burgeoning wave of fury. Recognition sliced through me, raw and unyielding. This was Jacob, a ghost from my past I had hoped would remain buried. "What do you want?" I managed, each word laced with both dread and defiance, attempting to shield my daughter's innocence, even as the reality of our situation closed around us like a vice that, "Oh, come now. Isn't it obvious?" He took a few leisurely steps closer, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "I'm here because I know things. Things that could keep your little girl safe. Things that could make all the chaos in your life make sense. Stay away from her." I spat, the urgency in my tone rising sharply. The waitress, sensing my distress, moved closer to my daughter, who still sat blissfully unaware of the storm cloud gathering in front of her. "Relax. I'm not here to hurt her," Jacob replied, feigning nonchalance. "But whether you like it or not, we're tied together by the past, and you can't undo what's already been done. You know this. You might want to reconsider being so hostile." Every fiber of my being screamed to turn away, to shield my daughter from his poison-laced words and the curse of past choices that continue to spiral in a chaotic line toward our present. A part of me felt the old, familiar tug of vulnerability, an emotion I had long since buried in the deep recesses of my heart. "He's not going to help you. You know that." The waitress suddenly spoke, her voice unwavering, filled with a fierce love for my daughter that I desperately wanted to claim in my own way. "You can't trust him. You fought so hard to protect her. Don't let him back in your life again." "Don't underestimate me," Jacob cut in sharply, a smirk curling at his lips. "I've seen more than you know. I can help you, but you have to be willing to listen." "Why would I ever trust you?" I said, the weight of his presence engulfing me like fog. "You left me to drown once. Why would this time be different? You're just trying to stir the past to get what you want. You think this is about me? You think I came back for some sort of reconciliation?" His voice dripped with condescension. "No, I came back to warn you. You're so blinded by anger that you can't see the real threat targeting you. Focus on that." The urgency of his words settled into my gut like a lead weight, and for a fleeting moment, doubt slipped in. What if I had underestimated him? What if there were shadows lurking that I had yet to confront? It felt unthinkable to even acknowledge. Why should I believe anything you say? I was torn between disbelief and the gnawing sensation that everything I held dear was at risk. "What do you know?" Jacob leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, the slick veneer of faux sincerity almost palpable as it dripped into my ear. "Remember those debts I warned you about? They don't just vanish. Someone wants their investment back, someone who has no qualms about hurting your daughter to get it." His words landed like a punch, cracking my defenses. My mind raced through the fog of my past, replaying decisions, poor judgments, and debts I would rather forget. Had my recklessness planted seeds of danger in my daughter's life? Panic clawed at my insides as realization seeped in. "Leave now." "I don't want you here," I said, more pleading than commanding, visibly shaken. The waitress caught my eye, her face illuminated with a warmth that ignited the flicker of hope within me. In her gaze, I thought I saw the possibility of allyship. Jacob offered a condescending smile, his presence increasingly sinister. "You can push me away, but remember you might need me. The storm is just starting, and I'm the only one who can guide you through it." He turned to leave, a shiver of dread curled up my spine, planted firmly deep within my thoughts. I could hear my daughter giggling, blissfully unaware and shielded by the magic innocence bestowed upon childhood. Yet, as the diner's door swung shut behind Jacob, I felt the fragments of my old life twisting like an unfurling vine in my chest, tightening their grasp. The waitress stepped forward, her hand brushing against mine with a warmth that sparked a sense of grounding. "You're not alone in this," she whispered, her eyes brimming with empathy and concern. But as the sirens outside began to wail again, this time more persistently, a new wave of unease flooded through me. The gentle hum of the diner transformed into an echoing reminder of a threat that wasn't just about my past. It was about my daughter's future. "What if he's right?" I whispered back, asking more of myself than her. And as I turned my gaze toward the door Jacob had just exited, the world beyond felt more treacherous, shadows creeping ever closer, as if I were standing on a precipice and couldn't look down without losing all hope. The waitress, sensing my turmoil, reached for my arm, firm in her unspoken promise to stand with me against whatever storm might come. But just as I began to draw a breath to gather my courage, the diner's phone rung a harsh jolt, slicing through the silence. My heart sank at a gut feeling I couldn't shake. "Answer it," she urged quietly. With trembling hands, I picked up the receiver, a reluctant dread weighing down each frantic pulse. "Hello," I asked, voice uneven. The voice on the other end was shaky, and the panic was palpable. Is this you? I have information about the threats about your daughter." My heart stopped, anticipation hanging thick in the air as the breadbasket rolled from the table. The world around me falling silent, everything crashing toward the unknown. "What do you know?" I breathed, grasping the phone tightly as the shadows stretched longer than ever, dancing eagerly across the diner's walls. The voice cracked, and for a moment, only silence stretched between us, the tension thick enough to suffocate. "Your daughter, she's not safe. You need to listen to me. There's something you don't understand." "Who is this?" I snapped, an instinctual burst of protectiveness surging through me. My grip tightened around the receiver as unease coiled tighter in my chest. "Please, you have to trust me," the voice insisted, hastily dulled by urgency. It's Naomi. I used to work with Jacob. He's been digging into your life, into your past. You have to get away from him before it's too late." Naomi. The name struck me deep, buried in a memory I tried to dismiss. I remembered her as being loyal, but all of that felt like a distant echo now. My mind frantically shuffled through fragmented recollections, weighing trust against fear. "How do I know you're telling the truth? What do you know that I don't?" A shuffling sound came through the phone. I wish I had time to explain. "Jacob doesn't just want you. He wants your daughter. There are people involved, dangerous people who don't just threaten, they act. You got to take this seriously. He took risks before, reckless ones, and the consequences are coming back around. You have to protect her." My heart sank further, ensconcing itself in a free fall of emotion. Jacob's threats were not mere warnings, they were real and tangible, like shadows threading through the very fabric of our lives. I glanced back at my daughter, her laughter ringing like a bell, bitten into curiosity as she played with the leftover ketchup on her plate, blissfully oblivious to the storm that swirled around us. "Naomi, how do I stop this?" I urged, desperation spilling into my voice. But her response was drowned out by the chatter of the diner, the clatter of dishes, the mundane remnants of ordinary life that seemed utterly disconnected from the chaos brewing on the other end of my phone. "They're coming. I can help you find shelter, someone you can trust." She glanced away, then added, "But you have to leave. Right now. If Jacob finds out you're aware, it could be too late." The urgency in her words shot through me like electricity. "But I can't just leave. I want leave without my daughter. You have to be the mother she needs you to be. You can't wait for Jacob to make the first move. You must act first." Her voice was frantic, resonating with a disconnection that rippled through to my very bones in that moment. The warmth from the waitress's earlier kindness wrapped around me like a soothing balm, offering a fragile glimmer of hope. "I can't do this by myself," I whispered almost to myself. The waitress caught my eye just then, her expression shifting to one of fierce determination, as if she had read the tides of despair rising within me. Without breaking her gaze, she stepped closer, a seamless presence leaning toward us. "You're not alone, remember? Whatever is happening can be faced with us together. We'll figure this out." The waitress' strength stirred something deep within me, yet the entanglements of fear and uncertainty threatened to erase every thought of hope. "No," I murmured, focusing back on the receiver, turning away from my daughter's innocent laughter. "Naomi, too can't. This is your moment, and the stakes couldn't be higher," she insisted. "He's proven time, and again he'll return. Don't let him win. Do it for her. Please." There was again my daughter's laughter, a pure sound challenging the gravity of panic descending upon us. As my knees threatened to buckle, tears prickled in the corners of my eyes. The raw truth settled heavily upon my chest. No choice I had ever made was more vital than the choice to protect her. "That I need a plan," I said, voice wavering ever so slightly. Naomi's reply came as a whisper, laden with urgency. "I know someone. You can trust him. But you have to hurry." Before she could finish, a loud crash echoed through the dinner commotion that licked at my instincts like flames licking at the edge of the night. My heart raced as I glanced, overseeing the front of the diner blockaded by unfamiliar faces, clothed in shadows that seemed to pulse ominously beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. "Get down!" I screamed, my voice clawing its way through the air as chaos erupted. The familiar warmth of the waitress' presence pulled me closer, shielding my daughter as I instinctively turned her away from the unfolding threat. The rattling of chairs and frenzied whispers ripped through the diner as patrons spilled into the aisles. The laughter shattered into gasps of confusion. "Naomi, are you still there?" I shouted into the phone, fear ripping through my words. The line went dead. I dropped the receiver, spinning around to catch the waitress eye once more. "We need to go. Now." As the door swung wide and the figures pushed in, a shadow surged toward us, dark and looming, skirting the edges of inevitability. As we scrambled toward the rear exit, desperation clawing at us, I felt a bone-deep realization settle in my stomach. This was just the beginning. Whatever nightmare Jacob had unleashed, it was now knocking down the doors of my sanctuary, ready to drag us back into the darkness we had all fought so desperately to escape. And somewhere beyond the chaos, I knew Jacob's smirk lingered, waiting for the moment when everything unraveled, when the past would collide with our fragile present, demanding its retribution, and my daughter's safety hung precariously in the balance. The diner was a maelstrom of screams, chairs scraping against the wooden floor, and the unbearable clamor of panic pressing down on us, the fear palpable in the air. With my daughter clinging to my side, I pushed through the throng of confusion, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribcage. The waitress's reassuring presence remained by my side, a beacon amid the chaos as we darted for the back exit. "Keep your head down and stay close," she urged, her voice steady, a stark contrast to the mayhem surrounding us. I nodded, swallowing the rising tide of dread and guilt that threatened to engulf me. What kind of mother was I to let the world outside in, to invite danger right to our doorstep? I was supposed to be her protector, and yet here we were, fleeing like terrified prey. As we burst into the alley behind the diner, the cool night air hit us, refreshing but filled with the sharp, metallic tang of fear. A moment of clarity washed over me. I glanced down at my daughter, her wide eyes reflecting the confusion of the world turned upside down, small hands still clasping mine tightly. It was that look, pure and untainted, that ignited the flickering flame of resolve within me. "Please, just follow me," I urged her softly. Turning to the waitress, I felt an odd mixture of gratitude and urgency. "Thank you for helping us, but we can't stay here. They'll come after us." The waitress nodded, a determined glimmer in her eyes. "There's a safe place just a few blocks away. I know the owner. He can help, but we have to move quickly." With one last glance toward the chaos behind us, I took a deep breath, urging my feet to move. We slipped into the shadows, darting through narrow alleyways and dodging the piercing lights of distant street lamps that felt far too exposed. As we ran, the weight of fear settled heavily upon my heart. What kind of life was this for my daughter? One moment she was coloring happily at the diner, and the next we were escaping shadows that drifted from the past, gnashing their teeth for retribution. The very thought sent a shiver coursing down my spine. "What is happening, Mommy?" My daughter's voice broke through my turbulent thoughts, pulling me back from the precipice of despair. She looked up at me, her innocence piercing through the thick fog of fear that had enveloped me. I opened my mouth to answer her, but words fled in the face of reality. What could I possibly say? The truths were too harsh, too grim for her to understand, too dangerous for her to bear. Instead, I pulled her closer, feeling her warm body nestled against mine. A fragile promise that I had to keep at all costs. The waitress glanced back, her brow furrowed with determination. "We're almost there," she said, a note of assurance lacing her tone. Just a little further. I wanted to believe her. I desperately needed to believe her. But somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered doubts, reminding me of Jacob's relentless pursuit and the depths to which he would sink to reclaim what he believed was his. I couldn't allow myself to imagine what he might do if he caught us. At last, the waitress pushed open a worn wooden door, revealing a small space illuminated only by the dim light filtering through mismatched lamps. The air was thick with the scent of brewing coffee and something savory, but my mind was too frantic to absorb it all. "Sam," the waitress called, her voice echoing warmth in the chilly room. A figure turned, a man with warm eyes and a comforting smile that seemed to cut through the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, concern etched into his gentle features as he took in our hurried arrival. "Jacob found us," the waitress explained. "We need to hide just for a little while." The man's expression darkened for a moment before he nodded, stepping forward to usher us inside. "You're safe here," he assured, directing us to a table tucked away in a corner. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my throat as I held my daughter close, praying that this sanctuary would protect us from the storm closing in. Moments turned to minutes as we gathered ourselves in this newfound shelter. I watched the waitress talk to Sam in hushed tones, casting furtive glances in our direction. I couldn't shake the sense that it was more than just a concern for our safety. It was a hidden worry that perhaps Jacob's reach could extend even into this protected space. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by the piercing chirp of my phone. Still gripping in my hand, I hesitated before answering, dread pooling in my gut. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it. The message illuminated in the low light. "I know where you are. You can't hide from what's coming. I suggest you come out and face me." An icy shiver ensnared my spine, realization hitting me like a blow. Jacob had found us. I glanced up at the waitress, who caught my eye and understood. "We have to leave, now," I whispered urgently, my breath catching as my daughter looked up at me, confusion and fear painting her features. But before I could act, the door swung open with a menacing creak, darkness flooding in as if it sought to snuff out the last remnants of hope. "Mommy, I'm scared," my daughter whimpered, and my heart shattered, every ounce of courage I had desperately pooling around the edges as I faced the approaching shadow. Because in that moment, I realized that Jacob had come to reclaim not just his past, but to shatter the very future I fought to protect. And as I looked from my daughter's terrified eyes to that door filled with looming dread, I understood that this battle was only just beginning. The door stood wide open, and in that doorway, Jacob filled the frame. He radiated darkness, the remnants of my past entwined with his very presence. Every step he took toward us felt like a hammer striking the fragile glass of my world, ready to shatter the moments I had fought so hard to create. He surveyed the room, his eyes piercing, searching, and my heart raced at the sight of him, the man who had once held power over my life, now encroaching upon the small haven I had carved for my daughter and me. "Here you are," he said, his voice smooth as silk but dripping with malice. The moments I had spent preparing for this confrontation felt utterly irrelevant. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, urging me to flee, to shield my daughter from the oncoming storm. Did you really think you could hide away forever? He took a tentative step inside, his confidence replacing any semblance of hesitation. Get away from us, I shouted, an unplanned surge of defiance spilling out with the words. My daughter clutched my arm tightly, her innocent courage mingling with my fear. You're not welcome here, I continued, my voice trembling but determined. Jacob paused, feigning innocence, but his mouth curved into a knowing smirk. Oh, don't you see? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. We have unfinished business. With every syllable, he drew closer, and the air thickened with the weight of our shared history fraught with chaos and heartache. Every moment a reminder of the frayed edges of my old life that threatened to unravel once more. Stop. The waitress stepped forward, visibly tense yet fierce. This has nothing to do with you, Dotto, but it has everything to do with me, Jacob replied, tone dripping with condescension. She doesn't realize just how entangled her fate is with mine yet. His eyes flicked disdainfully toward me before returning to the waitress. You really think that you can shield them? You have no idea what I'm capable of. He gestured towards my daughter, who stood valiantly at my side, innocent and unaware of the storm brewing in our midst. Is she really worth the risk? Shut up, I shouted, stepping between them instinctively. You don't get to threaten her. Not anymore. Desperation clawed at my throat as I fought against the darkness that encroached upon every hope I hadn't yet extinguished. But then, beneath the haze of fear and chaos, I sensed a flicker of defiance of fire igniting within the waitress, one I had seen earlier, mirrored in my own heart. What do you want from us? She demanded, her voice steady and resolute, undeterred by Jacob's venomous glee. You think you can come here, disrupt our lives, and walk away unscathed? I want what's mine, he replied smoothly. And that could mean either of you. It's simple, really. I could destroy the walls you've both built, just like that. He snapped his fingers, and I felt my heart drop. He was the embodiment of my darkest, fiercest tempest, wrapped in the guise of a friend turned enemy. The waitress and I exchanged a glance, our silent understanding coiling around us like a protective barrier. We wouldn't stand idly by. I opened my mouth to speak, to force strength into my words, to stand resolute against whatever threat he attempted to conjure. But before I could find my voice, my daughter pulled away from me slightly, standing tall, unaffected by the tension gripping us. Mister, she called out, her tiny voice breaking through the air, ringing with the innocent clarity of a child. Why are you being mean? You can't take my mommy, and you can't take her friend. She puffed out her little chest, her unwavering faith slicing through the shadows like sunlight. Sweetheart, I began, but her words caught in my throat, replaced by the sudden realization that my daughter stood as a torch against the encroaching night, that I like pancakes and coffee, and stories those are the best things. Can't we just be nice? She continued, and I could practically feel the room quaking under the weight of her innocent bravado. Jacob's expression faltered, and for a moment, confusion lit his features. Did he understand the power of a single child's fury? Stay back, he sneered, forcing a facade of anger, but I could see it beginning to crack, raw energy bubbling beneath the surface. No, mister, my daughter persisted. You don't have to be scary. You could just be nice like everyone else. Her simplicity rang firm, a bell tolling against the chaos, and I could feel the tension shifting, tilting precariously. Jacob took a step back, and I sensed hesitation creeping into his bravado. There's no use in trying to persuade me with a child's foolishness, he retorted, though the original fervor in his tone was now tinged with uncertainty. Then the waitress stood taller, angling herself in between us, a solid wall of conviction. You may have tangled us in your past, but we've reclaimed our present. You don't have power here anymore. This little girl has more strength in her small body than you could ever comprehend. The more she spoke, the more light seemed to penetrate the darkening atmosphere. I could practically sense her courage igniting ours. Together, we were something formidable, rooted in resilience, the radiant warmth bolstered by my daughter's fearless candor. Leave us in peace, Jacob, the waitress added, shifting her weight, poised like a sentinel ready to defend those she held dear. You've come to claim what was lost, but you don't understand what you lost was never yours to take. Not anymore. The air crackled with tension, my heart racing as I anticipated his next move. But the shadows that had clung to us, ready to encircle our lives once more, seemed to falter under our combined resolve. The waitress' strength waved around us, binding us into a shield, propelling our unity before us like a tide. Jacob's bravado withered, leaving behind only uncertainty, the very foundation upon which he had built his threats beginning to erode. "I'm not done yet," he muttered as he stepped back, his expression morphing into one of disdain mingled with confusion. "And oh, you're done," I countered, my voice firmer, layering strength into every word. "You will not haunt us anymore. We're free of your ghosts." The moment held, suspended in air thick with anticipation, and I felt hope bouncing inside me, flickering in the shadow of fear, ready to break forth. Jacob's anger twisted and hardened, colliding with the realization that our battle line, the light of my daughter's bravery, had shifted irrevocably in our favor. "Listen to your little girl," he spat, voice laced with venom and panic. "You think this is over? We'll make sure you regret everything." And with that proclamation, he turned, darting back into the shadows, the looming weight of his malice receding with his retreat. The air felt strange, as if a great weight had been lifted, tension hanging thick in his absence. The diner fell silent behind him, patrons frozen in disbelief at the chaos they had just witnessed. Wide daughter leaned against me, her small form trembling, but resolute as I enveloped her in my arms. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, heart racing with emotions cascading through me. "Was he really scary?" she asked, her innocence brushing against the edges of darkness. "Yes, but we're safe now." As the waitress knelt beside us, I felt gratitude flood my heart. "I can't thank you enough," I murmured, my voice full of emotion. "Your strength had helped." She smiled softly, her gaze meeting mine. "Together, we are stronger than the shadows that lurk in the past. You aren't alone anymore." And in that moment, recognition dawned, the threads of our lives entwined, not just in fear, but woven with resilience and hope. Each moment spent together had fused us, awakening a bond that felt sacred. Amidst the remnants of our confrontation, the diner began to return to normal patron stirring, the murmurs of soft conversation slowly rising to fill the void left by the chaos. The warmth returned, and as laughter flickered around us, I knew the true battle had begun, unfolding not between us and Jacob, but within our Selviza journey of healing stitched with courage. As I embraced my daughter tightly, feeling the pulse of life emanating from her, I glanced toward the weight of tomorrow looming ahead. "We will face whatever comes next together," I assured her, my voice steady as light ignited a spark of promise within me. And in that embarkation of newfound connections, the lingering darkness of my past faded away to reveal something much brighter, glimmering on the horizon, ready to embrace whatever future awaited us. "Family is worth fighting for," I whispered to the waitress, who nodded in silent agreement, her unwavering strength kindling an ember of hope that lit the way forward. The world spun in unpredictability, but as I breathed in deeply, the heartbeat at my side reminded Meth's greatest wounds can heal, that redemption is woven through love, and forgiveness can reclaim what is lost. And in those final moments of clarity, I understood. Sometimes it takes the voices of the innocent and the embrace of newfound family to mend the broken paths of yesterday. "Together, we will forge a brighter tomorrow," I declared softly to the room, one last promise I would safeguard for my daughter and the bonds we had built anew. Because tonight, we were stronger than shadows united. We would rise against the storms ahead. And with that thought, I felt hope settle in my heart, glowing bright as we stepped forward into the future that awaited us, hand in hand of family reborn.